All right, I'm joined now by Brent for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, a risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook. How's it going today, man?
Everything's fantastic, Adam. It's I say this every week it seems, but it's a great time of year. I mean, we got NBA going now finally as well, so just kind of those lulls during the week get filled up by that, so it's real good.
All right, well, let's take a look here at how the results have done so far, because I know this is something you just mentioned to me before we started recording here, that you track these games that we talk about here on these segments, both college football and the NFL, to see how they're doing, see how the sides and totals have wound up doing. What's the numbers you can tell us here?
Yeah, it's kind of a good exercise for myself, not only for the show, but obviously for myself, just in terms of, we do tend to take positions, or if we're going to, hold our position sometimes, we obviously are going to do that, not based on our own opinions, but based on what the Sharps are doing. So, it is good in terms of monitoring what we got coming through, to keep an eye on our progress. And college football so far is 42-24, which is like 63.5%, which is, obviously is very, very strong. And NFL, NFL has been great this year as well. 22-13, 62.9, I call it 63% now. Those are really, really good percentages and really good numbers. Also, just as, I'm obviously talking about the numbers that we get. If, we release a play, or not release a play, we talk about, say, Boston College +7 this week, and the line closes at 6. Well, for purpose of how we did, we're looking at Boston College +7, not the 6. But, I would say professional level guys are they're looking at a much smaller win percentage, but they're trying to apply that over a whole lot of money and a whole lot of games. And I do have the benefit of kind of picking and choosing. So, but still, 63%, that's really, really strong.
Well, let's see if that trend can continue here. We got a handful of college sides and totals, and then about 6 plays in the NFL that have drawn some sharp action here this week. But again, for our listeners out there, sort your odds screen by rotation number if you want to follow along. That's the order in which we'll go with these games here. And let's start Friday night in the Mountain West Conference. Game 311-312, Air Force and Nevada, for those of you that use that. We've got the Falcons right now about a touchdown favorite out there in the market, but it's sharp action on the total that's drawn some attention.
Yeah, every now and then we get to pull out a Friday game, and in this case we got one here. It is the total with Air Force and Nevada. And maybe, I say Nevada and Nevada, now you got me thinking twice. Maybe no surprise with these two teams in terms of they've both been giving up a ton of points. So it's no surprise perhaps that the sharp money did come on the over. They came in on the over 65, and we're at like 67.5 right now pretty much across the board. Everyone's either 67 or 67.5. But yeah, Nevada obviously is in a position where you've got to defend against Air Force. It's a kind of offense that you don't get to see very often. And again, not that either team is great on, in terms of the record so far this year. Air Force has won 2 games, which is one better than Nevada. So 2 teams that are maybe, not very good overall, but that does kind of, lend itself towards higher scoring games. And in this case, I've got, like I said, the sharp money on the over 65.
This one is interesting because you've got that Air Force triple option. You've got the Wolfpack with the air raid that they've incorporated here for this season. So that should be a fun game for those of you that are looking for something to do on Friday night. But I know what you're looking to do on Saturday. That's bet and watch college football. So we'll move over to October 21st here, beginning right at the top of the board. Game 315-316, Iowa and Northwestern in a Big Ten West battle. What's the story on this game?
Yeah, this one, the line here is kind of flopped a little bit. Northwestern was like either a pick or a small favorite. Now they're a small dog, and that's a result of the sharp money that came in on Iowa. Iowa is like a -2 point favorite right now, and the Sharps came on Iowa and they got the 1. So Iowa +1 is where the sharp money came in. You look at Iowa too. You kind of, I never look at this stuff too much and kind of rationalize and say, well, I agree with them, I don't agree with them. I'm just going to move my money based on what the Sharps play, regardless of my own opinion. I know what my opinion's worth, but Iowa definitely has a couple of tough losses. The Penn State, the Michigan State game. So there were a couple of close losses there for them. So maybe Iowa could be better than the record, but they are 4-2. You could easily make a case that maybe it should be like 5-1, perhaps. But sharp money again on the road team here. This is Iowa getting the +1 at Northwestern.
All right, we'll move on down a few spots here. Game 325, 326 on the board. The Buffalo Bulls, who have been much better than people expected here this season, taking on the Miami of Ohio Redhawks and a little bit of action. No really notable sharp action on the side as of yet, but we do have some totals money coming in.
Did you just say Maction?
I did.
That's nice. I like that. We have sharp money on the total this one. That one's on the under. We're sitting at 45, pretty much across the board, market wide. Everyone's sitting at 45 on this one right now. Buffalo quarterbacks have been downgraded, so looks like they're going to be struggling for depth there in terms of quarterback position, which obviously is probably part of the key here, and might be why some of the sharps came in on this one. They did tag the under here at 46.5. Kind of good for me too. I've got a little bit more money or a little more bets on the over. So I mean, the public, like you said, they're generally not going to get too deep involved in a game like Buffalo at Miami, Ohio. But what they have played so far is towards the over. So that's kind of nice when I got public money going one way and sharps going the other.
Yeah, and Miami of Ohio quarterback Gus Ragland also out for this one. So both teams could be down quarterbacks here in this game. So, of course, makes sense for the under to be coming in. We'll stay in the MAC here. Game 333, 334, directional Michigan rivalry game. Western Michigan takes on Eastern Michigan. We got sharp action on the side for this one.
Yeah, I got sharp action here on the home dog, Eastern Michigan. They were catching 4. That's where the sharps came in and grabbed that one. I do have actually more wagers on Eastern Michigan as well, so I've got kind of a slight lean towards the public on the same side. That line's down to like -3, dog 15, or -3, even dog 20 at some places I've seen right now. So the line has dropped down on the key number of 3, and Eastern Michigan +4 is where I got sharp action there.
Yeah, I would assume that there's a decent chance this game moves to 2.5, right?
I could see that bumping off, the way it's gone so far. And and the fact that when you get public money going the same way as the sharps, you're kind of more inclined because you don't kind of have that public money to rely on going the other way.
Kind of surprised to see public money on Eastern Michigan. I know Western Michigan's not having the greatest season, but they are certainly the more well-known commodity based on what they did last year, running the table in the regular season, going up against Wisconsin in, I believe, the Cotton Bowl it was. So I'm kind of surprised to see the public coming in there on the dog. So we'll see if that one comes to fruition. Let's go to game 339, 340 here. Noon kickoff between Temple and Army. Sharp action on the side in this one.
Yeah, I got sharp action on Army. And with the teams like Army, Air Force, stuff like that, Navy, I don't know. I always like getting behind teams like that, and I kind of like those positions in terms of after we dig in. They've always got the difficult offenses, typically, and you're probably going to get a solid effort from those teams all the time. This case here, I do have sharp money on Army. Now it came at 5.5. There's either like 6.5 in juice or 7 in juice pretty much across the board right now on this one. My count also favors Army, so that's never a great spot when you got public money going the same way. But I do have a higher wager count, almost 3-1 favoring Army, and that sharp money that came in at the 5.5.
Well, that sharp money, not mine. I mean, mine's not big enough to generate that type of activity, but I did grab Army at 6 even money earlier in the week, so that makes me feel pretty good there about that one. We'll slide down one spot on the board here, a game that nobody's particularly interested in watching, between BYU and East Carolina, game 341, 342. This is a number that has been moving down throughout the week, but the sharp position here on the total.
Yeah, I do have a higher wager count on the under, so we are getting more bets on the under. Yeah, you talked about this being one of those games where, it's not one of the more entertaining games to sit down or whatever and watch this one with BYU sitting at 1-6 and East Carolina the same record there. And we talked about before these. Some weeks you get games where you're talking about the kind of like the brand name teams, some of the top 25 teams or whatever. And other weeks you just got to throw out play the cards you're dealt. And this is one of those games where I do have sharp action. Again, it's on the over now, so the over 55.5 is where the sharp money came in. I got we're all the way up to 58 right now, so that's obviously trending upwards. But the sharp money came in on this ugly matchup at over 55.5.
Really interesting, very complex game here. Game 347, 348 between Syracuse and Miami. Miami has played a couple of really interesting games down to the wire here lately. Beat Florida State at the buzzer. Beat Georgia Tech late last week. Syracuse in a massive letdown spot after beating Clemson in the Carrier Dome last Friday. So what's the story with the line movement here?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Syracuse obviously had that big win, but yeah, it could be like one of those spots where you're sky high and then all of a sudden you come back down to earth on the road as well. So that's never the great spot. But yeah, in Miami, Florida obviously has been playing quite well. They're ranked number 8 now at 5-0, and the sharp money did come on. Again, numbers are so important. The money here came in on Miami, Florida at -14, and it's just gradually crept up. We're all the way up to 17 right now, and even maybe perhaps off that win last week. I do actually have more wagers on Syracuse. So then this is one of those, those positions where I do feel a little more comfortable that I do have the public on Syracuse, and I've got the sharp money on Miami, Florida. So, it's a good spot for us right now in terms of being able to hang, say, at 17, maybe balance our action, or even try and get a little more Syracuse way. That would be nice.
I'll be really interested to see what happens with this line. It is a 3:30 game, so people don't have to get up early to bet it. You would generally think that Miami going to be the more public side here in this game, despite what Syracuse did last Friday. Do you envision 17.5 as a result of some public, public money on game day, or would that take a sharp player to get you up there?
Yeah, I hope not. I hope we don't have to go any higher than 17 where we are right now. Like I said, I do, sometimes, the public bettors, they do kind of keep in mind, like, what have you done for me lately? And they do have that kind of Syracuse big victory in mind. So that might be, part of what's driving their betting on Syracuse. I don't know. And I think 17, it's a big enough number that should be attracting public money the other way. If I go any higher on Miami, Florida, it's going to be sharp action that went that way.
Game 355, 356, absolutely huge game here in the Big Ten. Michigan goes to Happy Valley to take on Penn State. This number has gone down below 10. It's sitting pretty much 9.5 across the market, but the most notable action on this game at DSI coming on the total.
Yeah, this is one of those we talked about earlier. Sometimes they don't get to talk about the bigger games on the board. This is one of the very big games on the board, obviously. Just got a ton of money involved in this one so far, so that's real nice, and pretty much balanced on the side, too. I do have slightly more money on the side favoring Michigan, but just not a whole lot, really. My wager count on this one as well slightly favors Penn State. So, it's just slightly, though. So I got slightly more money one way with Michigan, slightly more wagers the other way with Penn State, but none of that sharp. I do have sharp action on the side, on the total as well, though. I've got sharp action on the over. Sharp action came on this one on the over 43. We're all the way up to 45 right now as well. My wager count, too, is pretty much split, which is quite nice for me. So I've got good action coming both ways, but I do have the sharp action favoring the over. Again, it was over 43, and I'm up to 45 now.
So this is game 355, 356, Michigan and Penn State. The other huge game here this week, 401, 402, USC and Notre Dame. As of right now, I assume these are going to be the two most bet games of Saturday. Which one do you think will draw the biggest handle? That's
a tough call. Just the thing is, you just never know. And again, a lot of the games, as they do get, the ones that are later in the day, tend to get more action. So, I would be inclined to say the Notre Dame USC game, just because, the tradition of those teams and stuff like that as well goes well way back, in the rivalry kind of that they have. So I'm guessing that's going to be the highest bet game. But a game like Oklahoma, Kansas State is going to get a lot of action as well. So it's going to be, a good week for us, I think, in terms of the action we're getting. I've got quite a few games already that I can kind of pick out, like the Michigan Penn State that we just talked about, the USC game, where I'm getting a lot of action and balanced action at that.
All right, we'll move down a couple spots on the board here. Game 361, 362, Boston College takes on an upstart Virginia team doing very, very well this year for Bronco Mendenhall. What's the sharp action on the side in this one?
Yeah, you're hit the nail on the head. Virginia at 5-1. I don't think anyone saw that coming. But I do have sharp action on this one, and that one is actually on Boston College. So Boston College, you see the line movement here. Virginia did open -7, sitting down to 6 right now. Virginia, the home favorite here versus Boston College. That move is pretty much all of the sharp money that drove that way. I've got a higher wager count on Virginia, but I have more money on Boston College. That's because of the sharp action that came in at a +7 on Boston College.
All right, move on down the board here, keep things rolling right along. And this is a pretty interesting game and one that we talked at length about on our Thursday show. Game 371, 372, Central Florida and Navy. Huge one here in the AAC. Seems like you can't adjust Central Florida up high enough in your power ratings week after week after week. We got some sharp action on this game to talk about as well.
Yeah, this really is one of those. I like watching games like this because it's not your typical strong schools like like a Penn State, Michigan, and stuff like that. But it's still like a highly intriguing matchup for sure. Central Florida at Navy here. This line has seen a 2.5 point move all the way down to 7 where we are right now. We're kind of sitting at 7. There are some 7 dog 15s out there as well, with Central Florida being the road favorite. But I do have sharp action on Navy. That action came in at +9.5 on Navy. So you got got two teams with some really good records and playing really good football. My wager count in terms of the public action mostly, is about 5-1 favoring Central Florida. So I got a lot of public money going Central Florida, and I got some deep pocket sharp money on Navy at the plus 9.5. We're down to 7 right now, so my money's pretty much dead even on this one, but a very high wager count favoring Central Florida.
This should be a good one to watch because Navy generally tends to be one of those sharper teams. The triple option is not always the sexiest offense to run, but Navy's just so disciplined and they don't turn the football over. They wind up being a sharp side a lot of the time. And Central Florida, obviously, everyone knows what they've done. So this should be a really, really fascinating game, not just to watch, but also to watch from a betting market standpoint. We'll move down to game 383, 384 on the board here. A couple of name brand teams that just aren't having a whole lot of success this season. Oregon on the road at UCLA. What's the story here, Brent?
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe they're not having much success because they're not scoring many points, and that would explain why the Sharps are betting on the under this one. I do have sharp action. Yeah, this one go on the under now. I think this line opened a little bit higher. I took under action at under 70. I think if you grab the early market, you probably got maybe a half point or a full point better than that. But I took sharp action on the under 70. We're at 67 right now in this game. And I think, if you look back, you listen back weeks and weeks, we've had several times now we've talked about Oregon and the Sharps kind of playing their games under recently, so it could be kind of one of those things where the public perception of Oregon is still like the higher scoring team that they used to have as opposed to the team they have right now, and the Sharps have played their unders quite often, and they're here on the under 70 this week.
Game 387, 388 on the board, another Big Ten West matchup. This one between Illinois and Minnesota. Not really the world's most exciting game here this weekend. Minnesota favored by almost 2 touchdowns. Totals action, the story here.
Yeah, I've got under action on this one here. That's Illinois and Minnesota under 48.5 is where this this sharp action came in. We're all the way down to 45 right now, and again, just looking like market wide is pretty much painted across the board 45. Or there's still some 48.5 out there. This line did open with Minnesota almost like a 14.5 point favorite, so that's come down as well. They're sitting like 13 right now. I've got a very heavy wager count favoring Minnesota, so I suspect that was sharp action that came the other way on Illinois. Now, I can't say that, per se because it didn't come here. But I did get, I do notice by my wager count, it does kind of favor Illinois a bit. So it might have dropped down because of sharp action elsewhere, but not here. Like I said, I do have the sharp action, though, on this one on the under 48.5, and we're all the way down to 45 right now.
And I presume, Brent, that, this is just one of those things where if you're able to grab 14 or 14.5 with a total dropping into the mid-40s, I mean, from a math standpoint, it's a pretty sound investment.
Yeah, and anytime you've got like a spread total that a correlation of like around 33% or 1/3, that's usually like a good spot to grab that. When you have sharp guys tipping the under, if you can grab something like 14.5, sure, that definitely seems to make sense.
Side and total sharp action here in game 403, 404 in the Big 12. Oklahoma on the road in Manhattan to take on Kansas State. We all know what Bill Snyder is capable of doing there at home for the Wildcats, but that's not what the market is suggesting this week.
Yeah, I mean Oklahoma too. I mean, look at them. That big upset loss they had 2 weeks ago versus Iowa State. They squeaked past Texas last week. Just squeaked past them as well. But I mean, you've got a Kansas State team that looks to be reeling a little bit as well. They've only won. Well, they've won like 3 of 4, but they beat Baylor, which isn't what it doesn't mean what it used to. And I do have sharp action both on the side and total of this game. Oklahoma minus 12.5 is where I got sharp action. We're up to 14 right now. And also sharp action on the under 59, so I got quite a bit of a move on this total as well. This one's all the way down to 53.5, and this one just keeps on dropping now. I know there are some 54s out there as well, but this one's just gradually dropping. But the sharp action grabbed that number right away at the under 59. Just looking at my wager count on this one, I'm almost like 3-1 in terms of the number of bets I've taken favoring Oklahoma, and I've got actually more bets favoring the over, almost like 2-1. So I do have the public on Oklahoma as well as the sharps, but I do have a sharp public split in terms of the public betting the over on this game, and the sharps definitely on the under here.
I hope you have this information in front of you because I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit here with a game that's seen some significant movement in the market, and apparently you haven't really had too much sharp involvement on your end with game 413, 414, Fresno State and San Diego State. This is one that we had some questions about here on the show earlier on in the week, so I just want to touch on this one a little bit and maybe get a pulse for what the action's like there, because we've seen this number that opened 11.5 out there come all the way down now to 7.5.
Yeah, this is one where I've got, I always have guys who list guys. We'll call them list guys who are definitely sharp guys, and other ones who what I call kind of like pseudo sharp guys, who guys I'm following who might make the list, months down the road, or might make the list next week. One of the guys on that list did grab Fresno State plus 10.5, so that was, you can probably safe to say that was a sharp side at the number, getting 10.5. Now, looking at my money and my wager count right now, it's almost 2-1 my wager count favoring Fresno State. So I've got San Diego State. So I've got public money on the home favorite there, San Diego State minus the 7.5, and I do have sharp back away. My money, because of the sharp action that I took on Fresno State, is almost like 2-1 in terms of actual dollar volume I've taken on this game. So twice as much money on Fresno State, almost twice as many bets on San Diego State, and the guy who may be making the list one day soon did grab Fresno State plus 10.5.
All right, we'll switch over to the NFL side. Thank you for touching on that game. I really appreciate that, Brent. Tennessee and Cleveland starts things off here. Game 451, 452 on the board. We've got totals sharp action here in this one to kick things off in the NFL.
Yeah, I guess games like this are the ones that we talk about where they're not sexy games, and you might even want to watch this game. But this one has dropped in terms of the total action that we took. We're at 45.5 right now, and the sharp action did come on the under on this one, came on the under 46.5. Now I do have public money favoring the under as well, which is never a great spot, but it's not it's not overly dramatic in terms of this game. And again, I just don't think the public's going to get heavily involved on this one in terms of the total. But I do have sharps on the under of this one. Side action as well. I do have, what I'm going to call respectable action that came in on Tennessee at the 5. We're sitting at 5.5. We're pretty much 6 right now. 5.5 and 6 across the board. I'm using 6 myself right now. And looking at my wager count, it's almost 3-1 favoring Tennessee. And I mean, you can't really blame anyone for betting Tennessee or basically betting against Cleveland.
No, you certainly can. And I mean, you got this Cleveland team here, 1-5 against the spread, and they've been kind of a sharp darling, because a lot of times in the NFL, sharp guys like to bet those really bad teams because perception and reality, may not fully align. But feels like this year we haven't had as much sharp love on Cleveland, and apparently that's a good thing because they haven't covered many numbers.
Yeah, that's true. I think like what we found earlier was kind of like the Jets were that team that the Sharps kind of identified. Now I think that that window of opportunity is lost, but the Jets are a team that got played a couple of times early by the Sharps. And yeah, Cleveland, I mean, unless they're getting double digits or maybe 2 touchdowns, I just don't know when the Sharps or if the Sharps will come in on them.
All right, we'll slide down to game 457, 458 here. Sharp action on the side between Baltimore and Minnesota.
Yeah, I've got sharp action here on the home favorite, Minnesota. They're up to a 6-point favorite right now. And again, yeah, I mean, Sharps grab the better number. Obviously, that's what they do. They played Minnesota minus 4.5. My wager count is not too bad. I expect it to be higher favoring Minnesota, but I do slightly favor Minnesota in terms of my count. But I mean, Baltimore's sitting there at 3-3, so they're not awful. Even though they've looked awful at times, and Flacco certainly has looked awful at times. But so my wager count's not bad in terms of this matchup. But my money definitely does favor Minnesota because of the sharp action that came in. And like I said, we're up to 6 right now on this game. Sharp action at 4.5.
All right, I want to touch on this game just for the simple fact that it's a very significant game and there's a very significant injury in it. Game 465, 466, New Orleans and Green Bay. So Aaron Rodgers goes out, right? So, I mean, what does that mean for you guys in terms of the risk management department? How do you handle a situation like that, knowing that you've got to put a number up for the next week?
Yeah, well, you never look forward to it, that's for sure. And again, you didn't really get to see enough of his replacement Hundley to see how much he could do, or how good he may or may not be. Now, again, you obviously get a little more, a little more cautious in terms of how their game plan and stuff like that. And I mean, Green Bay seems to be content with who they have at quarterback, and they're going to run with him. And it's one of those things where you you've got to if you open a high number, you want to react to the injury, but you don't want to overreact to this injury. So it is a tough spot because you got to have a lot of respect for Green Bay, what they do besides Rodgers. But Rodgers is one of those guys who's just, I mean, who's worth more to the number than him. It's just really tough to say if there is anyone, especially with the drop down that seems to be at quarterback position. So this line did open up quite high with New Orleans like -6. We're down to 4 right now. So perhaps we overreact And, I just get a feeling that you could probably see this number drop a little bit lower. I do have a wager count that favors Green Bay, so they obviously think the home price is worth more. They're a live dog. They're, again, 4 is where we are right now. My wager count almost 2-1 favoring the Packers, and that wasn't sharp money that got involved there. So it's Green Bay, obviously they have a lot of talent on offense, but I think everything just revolves around Rodgers. And again, you take a look at the team they're playing. I mean, New Orleans has been pretty good. They've won 3 straight games after a rough start, so they're looking pretty good right now as well.
All right, game 467, 468 on the board. Arizona takes on the Los Angeles Rams. This game in London, and I feel like I may have had a position on this game if it was played in either L.A. Or Arizona, but it's not. It's played across the pond. So what is the position that the Sharp guys are taking this week?
It seems to be a trend with these games overseas, with they're playing the under, and that's the case in this game as well. I do have sharp action both on the side and the total. You can tell by the total how it has dropped down to 46.5 or 46. Pardon me. Right now I'm 46. There are some 46.5s out there, but the sharp action did come on the under 47.5. Arizona, they obviously showed some life last week. It looks like they might have found a running back who fits their system. Obviously Peterson just wasn't cutting it in New Orleans. He wasn't this wasn't a good fit, it looks like. Obviously you had a needy team with Arizona running back, and Peterson just slid right in there quite well. So maybe them having a running game helps contribute to the under. I do have sharp action also on the side, and that did come in on Arizona. Now they played Arizona plus 3.5 minus 105. So you just kind of don't discount the minus 05 versus the minus 110. It was the plus 3.5 minus 05, and that line right now we're using the Rams minus 3 minus 115.
And we do have some 3.5 still out there in the market, but like you said, you're 3 with a little bit of extra juice. Is this number pretty much dug in at 3 now, or do you envision going back to 3.5 there at the shop?
I think this is going to be, we're going to be set at 3. We're 3 minus 15 right now. I could even see it going lower to 3 flat. The 3.5s out there, there is, juice on the comeback as well. So, instead of getting like 3.5 minus 05 like this guy did, it's like 3.5 and minus 20 and stuff like that. You're laying on the plus there. So, just based on what I've seen so far in terms of where this one's going, my wager count is pretty much even, but the sharps have tipped their hand now. If I had, perhaps more public action the other way on the Rams, I could say maybe it might creep back up. But, even if we did creep back to 3.5, you'd definitely be laying like minus 120 or minus 115, kind of a 10-cent different where the sharp came in. But based on what I see right now in terms of the volume I've got, which has been good action on this game, good two-way action, a good two-way count. So I can't see us budging off 3 now that we're here.
Game 471, 472 on the board. Seattle goes all the way east to take on the New York Giants. Late kick for the Giants at home. That's a little bit of a surprise there for them. What's the story with this game?
Yeah, the Giants, they're on a roll now. They have won a game, so look out. The other thing, too, is you have to consider Seattle's coming off the bye, and that's usually like a very strong position in terms of sharps identifying teams to bet on. But this one, perhaps the line was just too high. It did open, some places I saw Seattle minus 7. It's down to 4.5 right now. I did take sharp action on this game on the Giants plus 6.5, and I do have more money now on the Giants because it was sharp money, but I have a higher wager count favoring Seattle. Not dramatic. It's almost 2-1 favoring Seattle, which isn't huge for NFL football games. So 2-1 in terms of the actual individual number of wagers I've taken favoring the Seahawks. But I've got the public on them. I've got sharp money on the Giants. Now in this game, if you ask me if I could see this come back up, I think I could see it come back up to like 5.5. We're sitting at 4.5 right now. I just get a feeling that the money's going to keep coming on Seattle, and the kind of like the 6.5 and 6 is where they grab the Giants, is where the sharps were playing. I don't think I'm going to see sharp action involved in the Giants at anything less than 6.
Well, was this a grab because of the low total, or was this a grab because this number was just too high?
I think it was just the number looked like it was just too high. And again, you talk about Seattle having to travel over there, and they just they haven't been one of the best road teams. If you look over the years, they haven't been that great on the road. Their home field is just huge for them. They've only won, they're 1-2 on the road so far this year. And the Giants, obviously maybe they're kind of feeling a little bit better out themselves after turning things around last week. Their defense played a heck of a game. So maybe the Giants weren't as bad as they looked earlier in the season. And they obviously suffered a whole lot of injuries, but you've got that 1 week to kind of get ready after that strong performance they had last week. They got a solid effort from the running game. Their tight end Ingram had a great game last week, so maybe they got some stuff to build on. It could be all those factors, but again, 6.5 obviously is when the line's 4.5 right now. I'd sure like some of that.
All right, game 473, 474 on the board. The Denver Broncos take on the Los Angeles Chargers here in this one. Line pretty much painted pick'em across the market, but we have had some sharp action earlier in the week.
Yeah, this is one of those not so good spots for us where I've got sharp action and public action the same way. I've got a wager count almost 5-1, almost actually 6-1 favoring the Broncos. So I've got a lot of public money favoring Denver, and I've got not one, but I've got two sharps on Denver as well. So that's the kind of even worst case scenario for us in that I got one sharp who came in the +2, another guy came in on the +1, and now we're sitting at a pick 'em. So I could definitely see this game going the other way where Denver ends up being the favorite by Sunday afternoon. Again, I've got a count of almost 5-1 favoring Denver in terms of the individual number of wagers I've taken favoring them. So the public is all over the Broncos, and then my money is almost 5-1 as well. So it's a real bad spot for us right now in terms of the actual money we've taken. In terms of like fear of the number, we're not too scared about a game landing between the two pick and crossing over to the maybe one on top with Denver being the favorite by kickoff. So that's not something that really concerns us that much in terms of the line movement, but the money's more of a concern.
All right, so this game wasn't listed on your notes, but we have to touch on it. Atlanta, New England, 475, 476, Super Bowl rematch, Sunday night football game. Everyone's going to watch this game. Everyone's going to bet this game. Easy to say this will be the most bet NFL game of the season to date. I mean, when we talk about something like that, what sort of handle do you think you wind up with on this game?
Yeah, it's obviously going to be very big handle for us. And I mean, anytime you get a Sunday night game where people are the kind of mentalities while you've got one game left on the board, everyone's going to watch it. The people who won through the day are maybe going to be a little less disciplined with their money in terms of throwing something down based on a game maybe they wouldn't normally play if it was one of the earlier games. And you got people who maybe lost a little bit for the week and just want to catch up with that last game. And again, because they're going to watch it anyway. So yeah, we're going to obviously have a ton of action on this game. It's interesting. Both these teams. I mean, neither of them look as good as they did last year. I mean, Atlanta's lost a couple games in a row, and they didn't look very good doing it either. And to me, there's these two losses, and now they go on the road at New England. So obviously, New England, is kind of getting all the public money, and that's kind of the way it is right now in terms of my wager count. I do have a decent split in terms of like about 2-1 in terms of my wager count favoring New England. So I've got decent money on the Patriots, which is no surprise. And this line has dropped a little bit. I did not take any sharp action on the side or the total of this game, but I do have slightly more money on New England, so I could definitely see this one climbing back up to 3.5 from where I stand right now. But yeah, it's going to be obviously a very heavily wagered game. No surprise that I've got more money on the over as well. I don't have any sharp action involved in this one, but my wager count is almost 4-1 favoring the over, and this line has gone all the way up to like 56.5 is where I am right now. 53.5, 54 is where it opens. So it's moved on the over basically mostly on public action, which is no surprise. And the side so far has gone down a little bit from the like a 4.5 opener down to 3 minus 120 right now. But like I said, I could see this going back up to 3.5 for sure.
Last thing I'll ask you about here, Brent, relative to the USC Notre Dame game that we talked about as probably being the most heavily bet college football game of the weekend, how many more times, I don't know if I'm wording that right, but in terms of the handle that you get for Atlanta, New England versus USC Notre Dame, how much bigger are we talking about here for NFL versus college?
Yeah, it's a lot bigger. I mean, it's the difference in NFL and college. The volume is huge. I would say the gap. Now again, you're talking about some big teams and some name brand teams, what have you. But I would say you're talking like almost 4 or 5-1 in terms of the amount of handle that you get on an NFL big game versus a college big game. Now again, those are big numbers, but it's still about 4-1.
Well, Brent, thank you so much for your time today, man. Really, really appreciate it. I know you got a lot going on now with NBA added to the card every day as well. And just wait. I mean, you're only a few weeks away from college basketball being added too. So I hope you catch up on your sleep, man. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Awesome, Adam. Have a great weekend.